Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhisham Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitham Dham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome everyone to our LILAMRIT class. So today we will be discussing further pastimes of Srila Prabhupada after the formal inauguration of the Sankirtan movement in the Tompkins Square Park on the land of America. So today we will be discussing how he went to the West in the West. So in New York, so New York is situated on the East Coast of America. And it is said the further west you go, more is materialism over there. So Srila Prabhupada had some good disciples, very sincere disciples in New York, who are following rules and regulations very strictly. They got initiated and they all started helping Srila Prabhupada by working very hard, dedicating their lives. But the scene was different on the west coast of America, San Francisco. But how Srila Prabhupada goes there, how Krishna makes arrangement, all this we will see today. Before this, let us see what happened after the Tompkins Square Park. So Hare Krishna was becoming very popular. There were regular kirtans in the park, newspaper coverages, and the devotees called it as the Hare Krishna explosion. So then one time at around 11 p.m. in the night, in the kitchen of Srila Prabhupada, there was a light seen. So some people are wondering, what is this for? What is Srila Prabhupada doing so late in the night? And Srila Prabhupada, he was teaching Kirtananand and Brahmanand, two of his disciples, how to cook, because the next day was Sunday and they would be holding a feast for the public. So Kirtananda suggested it will be advertised as a love feast. And Prabhupada was also okay with the name. Although some people thought that it sounded, some of his disciples thought that it sounded really very strange at first, to hear him say love feast. But then it was decided it will be called love feast only. And the devotees had put up posters around the neighborhood, and Prabhupada had said that he would cook enough for at least 50 people. He said the love feast should become an important part of ISKCON. So as he had explained many times, food offered to Krishna becomes spiritual, and whoever eats the prasadam receives great spiritual benefit, because prasadam meant mercy. Now, why did Srila Prabhupada call it love feast? Because this special name, love feast, it comes from Christianity. The religious feast in Christianity, they are termed as love feast. And because Christianity was a predominant religion in America, so the disciples suggested we can promote our feast as love feast, a religious feasting. So Prabhupada, he cooked nearly 1 dozen dishes, and he saw each of the dishes through its final stages. And then his disciples, they carried them into the front room in pots, one by one, and placed them before the picture of Lord Chaitanya. So there was halwa, there was a dal, two sabjis, puris, samosas, sweet rice, apple chutney, and also gulab jamun. Gulab jamuns are also known as ISKCON bullets. So why they would call gulab jamun ISKCON bullets? Because Prabhupada, he recognized that these gulab jamuns, they were his disciples' favorite prasadam. He called them ISKCON bullets because they were weapons in their war against Maya. So what does that mean? So the Sankirtan movement is explained as a war against Maya. So against the material energy. What is her task? Her task is to keep the living entities conditioned. And the task of devotees is to declare a war against this energy, against this energy's influence. So how do we win a war? By shooting bullets, right? So these gulab jamuns were just like bullets in the war against Maya. So when the disciples would go out distributing books, they would distribute these gulab jamuns as prasad. And Americans, they had never tasted gulab jamun. It was something like out of the world for them. So like you put it in the mouth and it melts immediately. And they would like to have more of it. And then the disciples would say, now if you want more, you have to come on Sunday for the feast. So these are the bullets. Once it is shot, then the person will surely come to your party. So Prabhupada even allowed a jar of these ISKCON bullets to be on hand always in the front room. And the disciples, they could take them without asking permission, and they could take them as they like any time of the day. So of course, we don't have such facility now. It was in the early days of ISKCON. Prabhupada was encouraging disciples. So one jar of gulab jamun was there every time, and the disciples can take as much as they want. So the first few love feasts were not very well attended. So what happens usually? Usually when we don't see that enough people, sometimes devotees, they get discouraged. Oh, nobody has turned up, and we were expecting so many people. So, but here it was happening something reverse. So the devotees, they were not disappointed that nobody turned up or few people turned up. So the first few love feasts, they were not very well attended, but the devotees, they were very enthusiastic about the feast prasadam. They did not find disappointment over the scarcity of guests. Why? Because they were prepared to eat everything. They told, no problem, it is good they have not come. At least we will eat everything. We will get to eat more. So they were very enthusiastic about the prasad. So now one point we can make from here is how should we honor prasad? So we should always remember Krishna's lotus feet while honoring prasadam, and chant Hare Krishna, being grateful to Krishna for the wonderful prasad. So in this way, feeling grateful, thinking of Krishna, thanking Krishna, if you honor prasadam, Krishna is very pleased. So gradually, then more and more people, they started coming up for the Sunday feast, Sunday love feast, and the prasadam was very, very famous. So the next important addition, or rather we can say revival in the movement in the West, was the republication of Back to Godhead magazine newsletters. So although in 1944, in his household life, Prabhupada started. And it was single-handedly that Prabhupada did everything from raising money to writing, editing, printing, publishing, distributing. Everything was done by Prabhupada. But now there are disciples. And also, this was the instruction of his Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. You publish. So Prabhupada, with the help of his disciples, he started his Back to Godhead magazine. Prabhupada wanted all his disciples to take part in it. He used to say, don't be dull. He used to say, write something. So he always wanted the disciples to write. Now, why he wanted the disciples to write? Because if you write, you get clarity in concepts and the spiritual life develops and you develop realization. So Prabhupada said, don't become dull. As soon as you have time, write something. And then the disciples like Brahmananda and Garga Muni, they took out the first issue of the Back to Godhead magazine. And then on bicycle, they distributed the magazines in every shop. So these disciples, they were very rich. They belonged to a rich family. You know, their father had a mansion of 50 bedrooms. Can you imagine 50 bedrooms in America? So very, very rich person. But they were not satisfied only in such richness. And they came to Prabhupada. And now such rich people are distributing newsletters, shop to shop, place to place, doing very, very menial job. But they were completely satisfied. But then Prabhupada knew that he did not have much time in his life. And two heart attacks he had already suffered. And he was an old man, and the society's name was International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So he was always thinking about his next move, how to take it to the other places. So by Krishna's arrangement, of the first few initiated disciples in New York, two disciples, Mukunda and Janki, they had plans to come to India. So although they were initiated, they were not so surrendered. And neither they were properly understanding that I should not make any independent plans. I should not make any independent decisions, never leave the association of devotees. Even though they took initiations, they did not understand this. But they had some feeling for Prabhupada. So some appreciation for Prabhupada was there, and they wanted to support him. But then they had their independent ideas also, and they wanted to go to India. So they decided, let us go to India and have a visit. So Prabhupada, of course, Prabhupada did not discourage them. So, and they were going through San Francisco. But, and before leaving, they came to meet Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada, just as a passing comment, he told them that just see if you can start a center there. You all are going through San Francisco, just see if you all can start a center there. And somehow, by Krishna's inspiration, Mukund and Janki, they ended up in San Francisco. And they could not go further. They stopped there only. And Prabhupada had said, see if you can start a center. And Krishna inspired them to do so. And Mukund wanted to rent a place and invite Prabhupada to come and start this Hare Krishna movement in the Haight-Ashbury district, San Francisco. Why? Because the prospects there for Krishna consciousness were very good. So he was working on that, trying to find a place. And, sometimes when Prabhupada, during the evenings when all the devotees would assemble in his room, Prabhupada would ask whether, Mukund was ready on the West Coast. And then during the first week of January 1967, a letter arrived from Mukund, and he stating that he had rented a storefront in the heart of Haight-Ashbury district, which was on the Frederick Street. And he told that we are busy converting into a temple. And Prabhupada was very, very happy to hear this. And Prabhupada announced that I shall go immediately. And Mukund wrote that he had a very nice plan. So San Francisco was becoming the capital of the hippie movement. Of course, it started in New York, but then most of them, they were gathering in San Francisco only. And Mukund told that there is a gathering of, the tribe. and he said that we have spoken to all the leading rock bands who are leading the hippie music movement, and we are organizing this very big mantra rock show in which uh, you can please come. So because that will help us to get good popularity for spreading our Krishna consciousness. So that is what Mukund wrote in the letter. And Mukund also sent a plane ticket for Prabhupada. But the disciples in New York, they had some other views. They were very shocked that he was going to leave, and they put forth various reasons why he should not go. They said that these people, they would not know how to respect you. They are just completely into drugs and they have no idea. They are uncultured. So you should not go there. You should give us time because we have not learned anything from you. And also, they were not sure how long Prabhupada is going to be there in San Francisco. They had also just got initiated and they wanted to learn more from Prabhupada. But Prabhupada said, nothing doing. I am to going. So he decided and he went to, he departed for San Francisco, and he remembered Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions that every town and village, this movement has to spread. So Prabhupada requested them that you please continue the activities that you have been doing here, and don't worry, I'll come back soon. And then on January 16, 1967, at the San Francisco airport, about 50 hippies gathered to welcome Srila Prabhupada. They appeared, almost, they were unsure what to expect from Prabhupada. They had not seen the Swami. They used to call Prabhupada Swami. They had never seen him, but what the Swami would be like. And only a few of them were knowing Prabhupada. And Mukund and his wife Janki, who had invited Prabhupada, they were, they had given them some idea. And so all from New York and even Allen Ginsberg, all they were present at the airport to receive Srila Prabhupada. And then Mukund told that if you all chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada would be very pleased.
San Francisco. Sorry, Mataji, bye. एक MOBIL है ना?
Can everyone please be on mute? Thank you. So then Mukund told that if you all chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada would be very pleased. So they were all chanting, and all 50 people in the airport, they were all, they were already familiar with this Hare Krishna mantra. They had heard about the Swamis chanting in the park in New York, or they had seen the article about Srila Prabhupada and the chanting in the, from the local paper, they came to know the oracle. Then suddenly walking towards them was Prabhupada. He had heard the chanting even before he had entered the terminal, and he began to smile. He was so happy and surprised, glancing over the faces, so many people there to receive him. But he could recognize only a few of them because he did not know anyone else, right? So yet there were 50 people receiving him and chanting Hare Krishna without his having said a word. So then a nice car was waiting for Prabhupada, and that car belonged to Harvey, who is the same person who gave Prabhupada his first accommodation in the Bowery. You remember we had discussed in the first session, the roommate, David had a roommate, and that roommate told that I'm going to California. So he is the same person, Harvey, and he came to receive Srila Prabhupada in his own car. So Saint Prabhupada asked, where is Harvey? So then Mukund said he's driving, and so I did not recognize him only. And Harvey said, welcome to San Francisco, Swamiji, and they would call Prabhupada Swamiji, as I told you. So Prabhupada was very happy to be in another big Western city on behalf of his spiritual master and Lord Chaitanya. And then he came to the temple, and people were already anticipating him, and he started giving a lecture. And it was a similar storefront, just like in New York. And Prabhupada's residence was up a couple of floors in the adjoining apartment. So after his lecture, as he entered his apartment, he was followed not only by his disciples, but also by the reporters from San Francisco's main newspaper, the Chronicle. So, so the reporter asks, what does one have to do to become a member of your movement? So Prabhupada says, there are 4 prerequisites. I do not allow my students to keep girlfriends. So just imagine he is speaking this in America at that time. Then he said, I prohibit all kinds of intoxicants, and including coffee, tea, cigarettes. And then he said, I prohibit meat eating, and I prohibit my students from taking part in gambling. So Prabhupada, very straightforward. He was very straightforward. And he said that I train my students to rise early in the morning, to take a bath early in the day, and to attend prayer meet at least 3 times a day. So our sect is one of austerity, and it is the science of God. So Prabhupada said the lines very clear from the beginning. Although it is the epicenter of the hippie counter, hippie movement, hippie culture, but he is not going to compromise on standards. So Prabhupada preached very nicely the philosophy to the reporters also. Then finally, it was a time for the main event, the mantra rock show. And although some of the New York disciples, they had objected, Prabhupada still scheduled for the mantra rock dance at the Avalon Ballroom. So it wasn't proper, they said, for the devotees out in San Francisco to ask Prabhupada to go to such a place, because all the people who were there in this ballroom, they were expecting around 4,000 people, although, but they were all into drugs. Most of them would be high on drugs. But the disciples were Mukund and Janki and all. They were very hopeful that what is the harm? No, the rock band is going to come. They will sing, but then when Prabhupada will come, he is not going to compromise. He is going to speak his philosophy. He will chant Hare Krishna, and everybody will benefit. And the disciples were also very new. So Prabhupada did not want to discourage them by saying that I won't come. So many musicians, everybody gathered, and it was like a regular concert. Rather, it was very difficult scenes, for ordinary, the spiritualists to behold. But Prabhupada was prepared. Prabhupada was a warrior, and he was the servant of Lord Chaitanya. So whatever arrangement has been done, he was willing to accept it for spreading his mission. So it was time for the concert, and Prabhupada walked up the stairs of the Avalon Ballroom, followed by Kirtanand and Ranchor. And as he entered the ballroom, devotees, they blew conch shells, and someone began a drum roll, and the crowd, literally they parted down the center, and all the way from the entrance up to the stage, opening a path, for him to walk. And Prabhupada, with his head held high, he said he was walking amongst them. And suddenly the light show changed, and pictures of Krishna and his pastime flashed. A typical, music concert. What pictures do you expect? But no, everything changed. All photos of Krishna's pastime, they came up. Like Krishna and Arjuna are riding together on Arjun's chariot, and Krishna is eating butter. Krishna subduing the whirlwind, the Mantranavrat. Then Krishna playing his flute. So as Prabhupada walked through the crowd, everyone stood applauding and cheering. And he climbed the stairs and seated himself on a cushion. Then the crowd quieted, and everybody was looking at, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, he was looking at Allen Ginsberg, and he said that you can speak something about the mantra. And Allen, he began to tell of his own understanding, and experience with the Hare Krishna mantra. Then Prabhupada spoke. He gave a brief history of the mantra, and then he again asked Allen to sing the mantra. So, and Allen Ginsberg, he began playing on his harmonium. He started chanting the mantra. And gradually, what happened is more and more people in the audience, they caught on, and they also began chanting. And it was the first time that there had been a musical scene in San Francisco where everybody could take part and participate. Everybody could sing, everybody could dance, rather than listen. Usually in concerts, people just have to listen, and the performers, they sing, they only dance, whatever. And so as the chanting spread throughout the hall, some of the hippies, they got on their feet, They held their hands and they danced and sang Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. You know, these people, no, they did not know also what they are chanting, uh, for what they are chanting, but to see so many people chanting, even though most of them were intoxicated, made Prabhupada very happy. Then Prabhupada himself stood up and he lifted his arms and he began to dance. And then he gestured for everyone to join in. And those who were still seated, they also stood up and they also began dancing and chanting. And so the chanting of Hare Krishna continued for over an hour. And finally, everyone was jumping and yelling and even crying and shouting. And Prabhupada, he was literally perspiring. He was perspiring profusely. And Kirtanananda insisted that the kirtan should stop immediately. He said Prabhupada is too old for this and it may be harmful for him. So, but the chanting continued for some more time before it suddenly ended. And then as Prabhupada, he left the ballroom and you know, the crowd, they were all very appreciative of him. And then he said that he made a comment that this is no place for a brahmachari. So Prabhupada also understood that this is not a place for a brahmachari, a civilized person, any sincere spiritual aspirant. So then Prabhupada used to give initiation to many. He was very merciful. Whoever would say, I want initiation, then Prabhupada was very merciful. He used to give them initiation. So some of the thoughtful followers of Prabhupada, they felt that, you know, certain candidates for initiation, they did not intend to keep the commitment lifelong. Initiation actually is a lifelong commitment. So some people, they came for only for initiation and they were never seen only, neither before nor after. After the initiation was over, they were gayab. They were not seen. So Prabhupada said that risk so I have to take, and he was ready to take all the risks. So one day in a lecture, he explained that although reactions of the disciples' past sins are removed by initiation, the spiritual master remains responsible until the disciple is delivered from the material world. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had warned that a guru should not accept many disciples. So initiation is very serious commitment. So once the spiritual master accepts the disciples, he takes charge of his life until he or she is liberated. So there are many pastimes which happened in San Francisco. So one time in a lecture during the question answer session, a big bearded fellow, he asked, can I get initiation? So some of Prabhupada's followers, they were very annoyed, but Prabhupada was cool. He said, yes, I can give you initiation, but before that, you have to answer two of my questions. So the first question is, who is Krishna? So that boy, he thought for a moment and said, Krishna is God. So Prabhupada was happy with his answer. He said, yes, you are right. So the next question Prabhupada asked was, who are you? So again, the boy thought for a few moments and he replied, I am the servant of God. Prabhupada said, very good. I can give you initiation tomorrow only. So this is how merciful Prabhupada was. And so the disciples at San Francisco, they were not that serious as compared to the disciples from New York. Some continued, you know, to go out and to the donut shop, eating food without offering to Krishna, eating forbidden food like chocolates and ice cream. You know, certain ice creams we don't eat, like, you know, all the ice creams we are not supposed to eat. So some even indulge in after kirtan cigarette breaks right outside the temple. Prabhupada is sitting inside and he has given a break, and these people, they come out of the temple and they smoke cigarettes. But still Prabhupada was very merciful. So some got initiated also without knowing what they had to practice. But Prabhupada was hopeful because they had picked up Krishna consciousness in their life. They had picked up chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So one morning at around 2 a.m., the boys who were sleeping in the storefront, they were awakened by a pounding at the door. So there was a lot of screaming, there were police lights. And when they opened the door, they saw a young hippie with wild red hair and bearded, and he was crying, "Oh Krishna, Krishna, please help me, please help me." So then the policeman, he struck his head in the door, and the policeman smiled, and he said that we decided to bring him here because we thought maybe you guys could help him. So the policemen were also not able to deal with the hippies. In the middle of the night, they would throw them into the temple and say, "You deal with them now. We cannot tackle them." So anyone who was distressed, they could meet Prabhupada. So Prabhupada had to deal with all these crazy people. And then gradually the disciples of Prabhupada, they became more and more considerate of who should meet Prabhupada. And they would not allow any dirty hippie to meet Prabhupada. So one such dirtiest hippie in the whole of Hat Ashbury was Rabbit. His name was Rabbit. His hair was dirty, filled with lice. His clothes were ragged and filthy, and his body literally stank. So he wanted to meet Prabhupada, but the devotees, they refused. "We won't allow you to meet." And then one night after the lecture, Rabbit, he waited outside the temple door. And as Prabhupada approached, Rabbit asked, "May I come up and see you?" And Prabhupada agreed. So this is how Prabhupada was so merciful. He could never say no to anyone. And then there was one more hippie. He asked, "Are you Allen Ginsberg's guru?" So now this was a very tricky question. Why? Because Prabhupada, he could not say no. He could not say that I am not his guru, because Allen Ginsberg was, Prabhupada could not say that I am his guru. So Allen, because why? Because Allen Ginsberg was into all kinds of wrong things, into drugs and all. And at the same time, he was supporting the movement also. So if Prabhupada says, "I am not Allen Ginsberg's guru," then again, it is a catch. So devotees knew that it would be very difficult for Prabhupada to reply in a yes or a no. But Prabhupada was very expert. He expertly replied, "I am nobody's guru. I am everybody's servant." So Prabhupada had not only given a clear response, but he had also answered out of deep natural humility. He was very humble. So, and he considered himself the servant of everyone. So this was our Prabhupada, so humble. So one morning, a couple attended the lecture, and the woman, she was carrying a child, and the man, he was wearing a backpack. They came into the lecture, and during the question answer session, the man asked, "What about my mind?" So Prabhupada gave him all philosophical replies, but he kept on repeating the same question, "What about my mind?" So Prabhupada then, with a lot of compassion, said, "I have no other medicine. Please chant Hare Krishna. I don't have any other explanation for your question." So, but the man kept on talking about his mind only. So finally, one woman devotee interrupted and said, "Arey, just do know what he says. Just try at least." And then Prabhupada picked up his kartal and he began kirtan. So such kind of crazy people were there, shouting, interrupting in between, arguing, debating with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had to deal with all these people. So Prabhupada, he used to go on morning walks, and devotees also would love to go on morning walks with him. Because why? Because Prabhupada, whatever he saw, he would connect it to Krishna, to some verse of Bhagavatam. So on one such morning walk, Prabhupada stopped beneath a large tree and he pointed to some bird droppings which were there on the ground. And Prabhupada asked, what do you think about this?" And Prabhupada was quite serious. And the disciple, he said, "I don't know what it means." But still Prabhupada waited for an explanation. What do you explain about the bird droppings? So, but Prabhupada's like, so the devotees started looking very intently at the bird droppings. And then everybody thought there must be some inner meaning to this bird dropping. So as Prabhupada was waiting for an explanation, one boy said, "It's the excreta of birds." So Prabhupada smiled and he turned towards others for the answers, and they were all silent. And Prabhupada said, "It means that these birds, they have lived in the same tree for more than 2 weeks." And he laughed. And he said that even the birds are attached to their apartment. So he spoke on attachment. Seeing this bird dropping. So how Prabhupada was seeing everywhere the practical application of Bhagavatam. So he said it is this attachment which does not let us advance in our spiritual life. So such were the wonderful pastimes. And then Prabhupada, when he was walking in the park, he was shown another very great area, which was similar to Tompkins Square Park. And this disciples told, can we have a kirtan here? So Prabhupada said, yes, we should have a kirtan. We should do kirtan here. And this was even more successful than Tompkins Square Park. And then Prabhupada would sometimes he would play mridanga, and all the people would hold hands and they would dance around him. So in this way, the Hare Krishna movement became very, very famous in San Francisco also. And Prabhupada established two very nice centers here. And San Francisco became very, very advanced. Even it became advanced than New York because a very special incident happened here. The Lord of the Universe appeared here. So we will see how the Lord of the Universe, Jagannath, Lord Jagannath, how he appeared in San Francisco. So it so happened that one day, Malti, she hurried into Prabhupada's apartment, and she took a small item out of her shopping bag and she placed it on Prabhupada's desk for his inspection. So, what is this, Swamiji? She asked Prabhupada. Prabhupada said he looked and he saw a 3-inch wooden doll with flat head, then with black smiling face and big round eyes. And it was a very unique form, for the especially for the Americans, with no feet and only torso is visible, and you cannot see fingers also. Just the two arms are studying out. So Srila Prabhupada immediately folded his hand with his palms and he bowed down his head, offering the little figure respect. So, and he said that you have got Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the universe. He is Krishna. So, thank you very much. So, Prabhupada was so pleased, while Malti and others, they were amazed seeing Swamiji so pleased. And Prabhupada explained that this was Lord Jagannath, deity of Krishna, worshipped all over India for thousands of years. And Jagannath, he said, he is worshipped along with two other deities, his brother Balram and sister Subhadra. Then excitedly, Malti was very excited to hear this, and she confirmed that yes, there were other similar figures also at the shop. The shop's name was Cost Plus Shop. So, and Srila Prabhupada said that you should go back and you should buy them. So Malti told her husband Shyam Sundar Prabhu, and together they hurried back and they bought the two other dolls also in the set. So then Prabhupada asked, oh, who is the person who can carve here? So Shyam Sundar Prabhu said that I have the skill of carving wood. So he said, okay, then you please, Prabhupada said, you please make nice deities, 3 feet tall deities, duplicating this, similar to this small statues that you have brought. So then Srila Prabhupada went on to explain what is this unique form about Krishna, Jagannath, Baldev, and Subhadra. So he said that one time Maharaj Indradumna, he wanted to worship Krishna in the same form in which Krishna, his brother Baldev, and sister Subhadra, they had come to Kurukshetra during the eclipse. So Maharaj Indradumna, he requested Vishwakarma, who was the engineer and the sculptor of the heaven. So Vishwakarma agreed to do this service, and he told, I will be carving out the forms, but I have one condition. While I am carving out the forms, you should not enter the workplace. If you enter, I will leave immediately. So Maharaj Indradumna agreed, and he was waiting for the work to be done, and he would hear that sound every day, that work is going on in the room behind the doors. So, but then one day he could not hear any noise. He could not hear any sound of any work, and he became a little curious, and he opened the door. And as promised, Vishwakarma disappeared. So at first it was thought that the deities were unfinished because the limbs were not visible completely, the hands were not carved, feet were not there. But later it was realized that this was the perfect form of Lord Krishna. The deities were not unfinished, rather this was the form assumed by Jagannath, Baldev, and Subhadra in ecstasy. And Maharaj Indradumna, then he started worshipping this form. And since then, we know that Rath Yatra is a very huge festival in our country. So similarly, here also in America, Srila Prabhupada wanted to manifest similar pastimes, Rath Yatra pastimes, which he has been doing since childhood. The Rath Yatra, when he was a child, he also had his Rath Yatra. And so So then Sham Sundar Prabhu, he carved the deities, and Prabhupada did installation ceremony. And he said that, just, he was not very strict. He said, just offer candle, move the candle around and chant the Hare Krishna mantra. But the Hare Krishna mantra should be chanted continuously. So he said, if one devotee is tired, another devotee should continue chanting. And he said that Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the main ritual, and it attracts the Lord and gives benediction to all. So then Prabhupada, after everybody finished, offering the candle, moving around the Lord, he placed the candle on the plate and he asked them to put it on their head, like how we take Aarti when we are in temple, and also when we do Aarti, we take Aarti, after the Aarti is finished. That is so, and he told them that you should make some offering to Krishna. And he said that whenever you come next, please get something for Krishna. Anything, fruits, flowers, just like when we go to visit someone, we take something, right? Similarly, when we come to meet Krishna in the temple, we should offer him something. This is the minimum that we can offer. Patram, pushpam, as Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita, patram, pushpam, phalam, toyam. So offer me leaf, offer me water, fruit, flower, but it should be with lot of love and devotion. And we can do this in our houses also. It is very simple, right? And so this way, Prabhupada, he introduced deity worship. So the hippies, they started bringing, whatever they could. The half loaf of bread also they would get. They would get fudge, they would get fruit. And they had heard that before using a new thing, it should be offered to Krishna. So what they did was, they started bringing their new clothes also and offered it to Lord Jagannath with a prayer before wearing them. So then after staying, Prabhupada, he stayed with them for about 2.5 months. And then Prabhupada left. And all the devotees, he left for New York. They went, all the devotees, they went to the airport to see him off. And the devotees, they were literally in tears, they were literally crying. And Prabhupada said, don't worry, I will come back, but you must hold a Rath Yatra festival. And you should do it very nicely, and you should attract many, many people. So, and in this way, Prabhupada, in the month of May, in the year 1967, he returned to New York. And as he landed in New York, he went straight for a 3-hour lecture at his Second Avenue storefront. So now these disciples of Prabhupada, they were always thinking that Prabhupada is completely empowered. And they could not understand that Prabhupada is having an old body and he might be having some external difficulties. And there were some symptoms also. So like when he had gone for a TV interview, after interview, he complained of great headache because of the lights present in the studio. And at another occasion, he called one of his disciples and he explained how he is having difficulty in his heart. And then Rupanuga, one of his disciples, he saw that when Prabhupada was lecturing, when he was giving a lecture, his hand was trembling. So then, but they could not understand. They thought that Prabhupada is so completely empowered, nothing can happen to him. So then, but at last, during the last week of May, Prabhupada began to feel exhausted and his condition became worse. And Prabhupada, he had another attack and his left side was paralyzed. So devotees, they came to see him, his disciples, and he asked his disciples to chant Hare Krishna and told them to pray to Krishna in the form of in his form as Narsingadev. So you know what he told them to pray? He said that my spiritual, okay, please pray like this. Huh? These are the words. My spiritual master has not finished his work. If you so desire, please save our spiritual master. So because Prabhupada was worried not for his personal health, but he was worried for his mission. He knew that if his mission remains incomplete, this will be the end of Hare Krishna. So he wanted to establish it very strongly. And Prabhupada knew that massage was the only cure for him. And then different devotees would massage different parts of his body. But the next day also his condition did not improve. So then they called for an ambulance and he was admitted to the hospital. And then in the hospital, he was given nice treatment and slowly his health improved. And he did not like to stay in the hospital. He was very eager to leave the hospital, and as his health improved slowly, and he was discharged from the hospital. And then he was not brought to the Second Avenue storefront. He was taken to a different place away from the temple so that he could recover it. And that place was on the beach in New Jersey. So, but it was difficult for him over there also. Why? Because the most important thing for Prabhupada to recover was sunlight. And Prabhupada said, here there is no sun only. How will I recover? Then, but his disciples, they kept on massaging Prabhupada every day. Then Prabhupada said that he discussed that his plans of going to India, and he told his disciples Kirtananda and Gaurasundar that he wanted to start in Vrindavan, in India, an American house, a place where his American disciples could learn the Vedic culture, and to help them preach all over the world. So which will help them so they can preach all over the world, right? So he said that he also wanted some of his disciples like Kirtanananda and Brahmananda, Hayagrev to take up sannyas. And he said, when I'm in Vrindavan, I'll give you sannyas over there. But his real work was in America, no? If he could just regain his health, but there was no sunshine here. So they were very worried. And they continued their seva. They used to massage him every day. They used to take good care of him. And they were very worried that if Prabhupada, if he goes to India, who will guide us? And so then nobody will be there to guide us. So they were worried about that. And slowly, Prabhupada recovered. He told Kirtananda to inform the devotees in San Francisco that if they held a Rath Yatra festival, he would come. So then June end, he returned to New York. He was in New Jersey, no, for recovery. He was taken over there. So again, he returned to New York. He went for a checkup, and even the doctors were surprised at Prabhupada's recovery. He recovered very nicely, and the doctors had no objection to Prabhupada flying to San Francisco. So he was so eager to guide his followers who were performing the first Rath Yatra. He had the air tickets booked for himself and Kirtanananda, and both of them went to San Francisco, New Jagannath Puri. It was renamed as New Jagannath Puri by Srila Prabhupada. And the devotees of San Francisco, as told by Prabhupada, they organized a nice Rath Yatra. But Prabhupada, as he was not that, his health was not that good, he could not participate in the Rath Yatra. So after the Rath Yatra, the devotees came to meet Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was very glad that they conducted the festival so sincerely, so nicely. Even although they were not trained, no, they were untrained. It was their very first Rath Yatra, and Prabhupada was also not present in the Rath Yatra. So then again, Prabhupada, he spoke of going to India. So now this time, so he had made up his mind, okay, I'm going to India. But the disciples, they did not want him to go, because they did not want Prabhupada to go, because they wanted to learn more from him. It was just like a little time had passed, that they were learning from Prabhupada and they wanted to learn more. So before leaving, Prabhupada instructed that he gave instructions. So what were the instructions? The first instruction he gave was, be humble. So be humble and be tolerant. So this was the first instruction he gave. Then he said that you must have enthusiasm and patience. Why enthusiasm and patience? So that if you have enthusiasm and patience, you could spread this Krishna conscious philosophy. You can push this Krishna conscious philosophy. And then he said that you stick together and push on this movement. There should not be any fights between you all. You should be together only. And it is for the benefit of it is for your own benefit, and also it will benefit others also. And the last instruction that he gave was, repeat whatever you have learned. What does that mean? Means whatever you have learned, you preach to others, and you don't keep it to yourself. Simply, and if you follow this instruction simply, Prabhupada said, I will be very happy. But they were not happy. Prabhupada he gave them nice instructions and all. So they thought that what if Prabhupada does not return? But Prabhupada ensured them that whatever Krishna consciousness he had given them, that would be enough even if he does not return. He said, even though I am leaving, my spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhakti Vinod Thakur, they are here. He had their frames on the wall. He said that you are all my spiritual children. I'm your spiritual father. You all are my children. And what happens in the absence of father? What will happen? What happens if grandparents are there? They will take good care. So he said, in my absence, they will take care of you. You know, the grandparents take care of the grandchildren even better than the father. So he said, do not worry. Just go on chanting Hare Krishna. You will be chanting here. I will be chanting there. And this vibration will circulate around the planet. And in this way, we will always be in close association. So then Prabhupada, he left for India with Kirtanananda, leaving all his disciples in tears. Then what eventually had Krishna in store for Srila Prabhupada? What happened in Vrindavan? And how Prabhupada, with greater vigor and energy, to the delight of his disciples, he came back to America after recuperating. All these pastimes we will understand on Saturday. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.